Chapter 9. Monday noon. As soon as Doreen walked into the kitchen, she noticed the almost deafening silence. She raced to the living room, but it was empty. She dashed out the front door to see the men packing some of the living room furniture into the truck. Scott saw her and said, "There you are. We've got everything but the couch packed up, and then we'll work upstairs in the bedroom. But we wanted to get these smaller pieces in first." She looked at the big panel truck and nodded. "When I came in the kitchen door, I couldn't figure out where you guys were." "Not to worry," he said. "We're still here. It will definitely be an all-day event. Still, we have hope we can get out on time." "Perfect," Doreen said, leading the way back into the house. With the coffee table and the two pot chairs now gone, there was more space. "Also, I was hoping you could give me some names of other antiques experts to ask about some of this little stuff." She pointed to the knickknacks. "I already had a thief come in and steal several pieces, and they're now being held by the police as part of the investigation." Scott's face showed worry. "Oh my," he said, "that's terrible." "I know," she said. "We caught him in the act, so that's the good part, but he had a list already that he was collecting, and that was not so good. He also knew about the bigger pieces of furniture, so I'm really glad you came today to get this stuff. It's been a tough weekend waiting." "I am too then," Scott said, "and I'll definitely email you a couple names. I said I'd do that before, didn't I? I'm so sorry, my dear. I must have forgotten." "It's not a problem," she said. "At least the other items are small, so they should be easier to ship out. Unless they need to be shipped somewhere farther away." "True," she said. "But I don't want to worry about that until I know more. I'll think about it. Let me keep working. This big couch will take a fair bit of time. I know the four men will handle it themselves, but I do want to oversee the process," he said, sounding worried and looking back toward the living room window. "Sure. You do that," she said. "I'll put on a fresh pot for you." "If you wouldn't mind," Scott said. "I know the men would definitely like a cup. We'll also take a break after the couch and get some lunch." She nodded and he walked back outside. She put on a fresh pot of coffee, but she poured the old coffee into her cup and microwaved it. It was still so hard for her to waste food. She knew it was stupid because she was about to put another pot on, but no reason why she couldn't have some of the old and these guys have the fresh coffee. They were the ones working hard. She certainly wasn't. When the coffee was done, she peered into the living room. The men were busy wrapping and packing and taping. She watched in fascination as the entire couch was bundled up securely. The sense of loss in her heart surprised her. She really would miss that piece. Not because it was comfortable to sit on, because it wasn't. Not because it was her style, because again, it wasn't. Not because it was a piece she had loved to look at, because yet again, it certainly wasn't. But it was a piece of her heritage, a piece of her ancestry, and that gave her an unexpected sense of loss. When the men tried to pick it up and carry it out, she winced. "Will it fit through the door?" Scott came to her side. "Let's hope so," he said, watching the men as they tried to angle the couch to test the fit through the front door. Scott asked, "Do those living room windows open?" She nodded. "They certainly do." With the men still trying to fit through the couch through the front door, she opened up one of the big windows. Scott halted the men and pointed. The men all nodded, backed up, and proceeded to maneuver the couch through the open window, with two men inside and two men out. Doreen had such a sense of relief when the couch was finally loaded into the truck, that she stood with her hand over her mouth in disbelief. She closed the window and Scott said, "You might want to leave it that way. I'm not sure how to get the bed out yet." "Oh my. I forgot all about that," she said. "I hate to admit it, but I was afraid that would be an issue from the start." He nodded and motioned at the living room. This room looks incredibly empty now. She danced around in a circle, her arms wide. This looks much better. Several pieces of paper were on the floor that had fallen when they dislodged the couch. Doreen bent and scooped them up. One said Penny Jordan on it. She laughed and held it up. I just had tea with Penny Jordan. Scott looked at it and smiled. She pocketed the first piece and took a look at the second one. Interesting, she said. Plants are listed here. I don't know anything about plants, Scott said. I do, Doreen said, but I definitely don't use these for what they're meant for. He looked at her in confusion, and she then pulled out the piece of paper with Penny's name on it. She frowned, turned it to read the chicken scratch notes on the other side. What do you mean? Scott asked. Foxglove digitalis belladonna, she read. All plants used for medicine. Nothing wrong with that, is there? All of our traditional medicine came from herbs and plants at one point. At least until the pharmaceuticals could create designer versions of them. She nodded, folded the pieces of paper, and put them away. What she hadn't told him was they were in Nan's writing, and that meant Doreen needed to ask Nan what the hell this was all about. And how long ago had these plans been discussed? Scott said, if you've got that coffee ready, pointing to the men, they're ready to take a break. As she watched, the 4 men hopped from the truck, and instead of coming toward the house, they pulled out sandwiches from a bag. She called out, if you want a coffee to go with that. The men all nodded. She walked back into the kitchen, poured 4 cups, and she and Scott took them out to the men. Outside they all sat and talked as the men ate big sandwiches. Did you get those locally? Yes, Scott said. At the deli just down off of KLO Road. I know a little mall is in there, she said. I haven't had time to do very much exploring. You should check out the deli, one of the men said. These are really good. She nodded and her phone rang. Seeing it was Nan, she said to Scott, I'll be right back. She headed inside as she answered her call. Nan, I was just about to call you. Good, Nan said. Did the antiques guys show up? Yep, the living room has been packed up. And just as they took out the couch, I found some papers on the floor in your handwriting. Nan laughed. Of course you did. You could find all kinds of stuff now. What did these papers say? Penny Jordan and a bunch of plant names, she said slowly. And she named them off again. Oh yes, she said. I remember that. Penny and I were talking about plants that were harmful to have in the garden. But these aren't always harmful, Nan, she said. And so many people who have them in their garden are none the wiser. No, but I think Penny was asking for another reason. Blissfully unaware of Doreen's sudden gasp of surprise, Nan added, besides, I told her these could kill someone. Interesting, Doreen said, as she pulled out the pieces of paper and looked at them closer. Did she have a reason for asking? Of course she did, Nan said. I always figured she killed George. I was just waiting for you to prove it.